So in the lecture section of these videos, I mentioned that class time would be mostly spent on problem solving. But how do you solve the problems if you don't yet know the material? Well, there are three ways that you'll get introduced to the material. The first is the textbook. So here is a copy of the textbook. You can see it has the very generic name of University Physics, and it is by Young and Friedman. This one is an older copy. It's the 13th edition. I believe that the 15th edition is the most current edition. But the truth is that the content hasn't changed very much. So by all means, go ahead and get a copy of one of the older editions. These older editions will be cheaper rather than the hundreds of dollars you'd pay for a brand new one. You'd pay maybe $40 or less. You can also see that the copy that I have here is rather thick. That's because it contains the content not only for Physics 113, it also contains the content for Physics 116, which is the second course in the sequence, and more content beyond that. So if you're taking just Physics 113, then you don't need to buy the whole book. You can just buy volume 1, which covers Newtonian mechanics, which is all you need for Physics 113. If you plan to go on and take Physics 116, then I would recommend probably getting the whole textbook. Now, I myself am a fan of physical copies of books, especially when studying a technical subject. There tends to be a lot of flipping back and forth between different pages or different sections. And that's something you can't easily do with a soft copy or a PDF file. You can scroll, but there's a certain ease to being able to just flip back and forth between, say, chapter 2 and chapter 10. You also tend to have a mental picture in your head of where things are in a physical book. You might think, oh yeah, I remember this problem about a car going around a curve, and it was here in the lower left of the page. And on the opposite page, there was an example where the car was going around a banked curve. So that sort of physical placement of content in the textbook, that spatial element there, that's something that you don't get if you're just doing an infinite scroll on a PDF. So if you are getting a physical copy, by all means, go for the cheaper older editions. Anything after the 11th edition is fine. You can beg, borrow, or rent. Please don't steal. The library also has some copies on reserve that you can borrow for some time. Now, my preference is for the physical textbooks, as I said, but I realize that not everyone shares that preference. And it's also, even if you have a physical copy, it's a good idea sometimes to have a digital copy on the side because they're easy to carry around. So what about digital copies of the textbook? The other option is to go here to a different program called Inclusive Access. This isn't a PDF copy, it's laid out slightly differently. And what you will find here is that if you use this option, you'll be able to buy a digital copy of the 14th edition for $35. If you don't want to do that, it's important that you opt out before September 17th. Because otherwise, this will be automatically charged to your student account. So this is an opt-out, not an opt-in setup. So keep that in mind.